Right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a Hoops Journey episode 145. I'm a believer in timing and things coming together. The irony of today, after trying to connect with this gentleman, is that our meet time today was 1:45 Pacific. So episode 145 at 1:45. A gentleman who was recommended to chop it up with a couple people, but mostly Mr. Phillips from way back a few episodes ago. Mr. Eric Newman. I mean, the list that I have here, it goes on and on, right? He's a producer, director, content creator. He is behind the scenes and has been behind the scenes in a couple of my favorite podcasts, right? Former executive producer, All the Smoke Productions. What else do I have here? He had the directing the film Kevin Garnett, Anything is Possible. And for those that know me out there, Kevin Garnett is probably top three, one of my favorite players of all time. Not even close. I got the autographed jersey up in my man cave that my wife uses as an office, but that's beside the point. Helps with KG Certified, ESPN, Turner Sports, like the list goes on and on and on. As I said just before we hit record here, I'm on edge because I feel like I'm going to be judged with my skills and abilities. And he's happy because he's on the other side, just being able to chat and not have to worry about what's happening and who's saying what and what do we edit, what do we cut out. And a huge project that he's a part of right now is A Time to Yell, More Than a Statue as well, which I know we'll get into. Mr. Newman, how are you? And thanks for being with us today.
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for staying on me to make this happen. And as we like to say, the basketball gods have cooperated with episode 145 at 145. So that's good stuff. That's good
You
stuff.
got it. You got it. Let's get quick question for you right off the bat. I mean, opening night is around the corner. How are we feeling about your beloved Boston Celtics? What are we thinking? You are rocking a Larry Bird t-shirt, splashing a J over top of Mr. Abdul-Jabbar. What'd you say, the 87 finals? So how do you think it's going to go? I think they're the team to beat personally, and it's a long road ahead, but early thoughts before we jump into the episode about yourself.
You know what's so great is, and it's obviously 16 years since the last title, and the '08 team is literally, I feel like it's part of, who I am from a basketball fan standpoint. But you know, the summer, it was like, okay, like sit back, relax. The Celtics are champs. I go into filmmaking mode, like
Yeah.
immediately after the finals. And then all of a sudden, the calendar just starts to move. And you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, training camp is 3 weeks away. And now opening night, as we're recording this on October 10th, is 12 days away.
Yeah.
But the first thing I'm going to say is, and yes, I understand Joe Mazzulla's psychology of, we're starting the season clean slate. It's anybody's championship, but the Boston Celtics are the champs until June of 2025.
Bang,
And
bang.
being able to live in that and really just enjoy this team, but also enjoy seeing all the other moves teams made, because they are the team to beat. They've
Hmm.
got that starting five, great depth. Obviously, JT and JB still haven't hit their primes, which is
Which
frightening to
is
think about.
crazy.
And, the run they went on in the playoffs was barely with a healthy Kristaps Porzingis. So I feel great about this. Excuse me, 3, 2, 1. I feel great about the season ahead. But make no mistake, like there's a target on their chest. But if you're pointing back to history, and as you know, before this conversation, what a big history person I am,
Yep.
the 2008 Boston Celtics started the '08-'09 season 27-2. Like they were that good out of the gate and that hungry. And then obviously the KG injury in February of 2009
Ugh.
had a huge impact on them not getting back to the finals. And really, a huge impact on them not winning a second championship, which they were so close to doing the following year. So feel great about it. It was so great to not just be in the building and get to know people around the organization and connect the eras with KG and Paul through all the different content I was able to have the opportunity to produce and direct and do so under the Showtime basketball umbrella.
Hmm.
But, that connectivity between the eras and watching this team go through the growing pains and climbing that mountain, being knocked down, getting up, climbing the mountain. And I think Brad Stevens said it best post game celebration of the finals. I'd rather have my guts ripped out and have to go at it again than to never be in that position. And he
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that either after the finals or after they won the East. And it's been a great ride. And to be a basketball fan, work in basketball, tell stories in basketball, and be so driven by the Celtics and Celtics history, it's pretty special.
No doubt. Do you think just keep rolling with this for a sec. Do you think that there's a little, do you buy into that whole narrative of like, oh, unhealthy, blah, blah, blah? Do you think the locker room is like, let's run this back and let's show them, right? Because there still is a lot of people saying, oh, they had the easiest run ever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you could say for the Raptors too, right? They ran into a lot of things the year they won. Things happen. It's pro sports, right? So do you think
Yeah.
maybe some of the pinboard material is like, hey, let's do this and show them really who we are, just in case they forgot, or is it let's just have the season play out?
Oh no, and this is not me with some crazy insider knowledge. This
Yeah.
is knowing what that organization stands for.
Yep.
And they say they don't listen to the nonsensical at times narratives that are out there, but they're very motivated.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is getting to the mountaintop, I think the hardest thing to do is defending a title. And I think
Hmm.
they're going to embrace that challenge and know that with this window with this team, and obviously Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have long careers ahead of them. But
Yes.
with this group, with Horford being the age he is, with Holiday being the age he is, with Derek White now at this level, but also because of the CBA and obviously Porzingis having 2 more years on his contract,
Hmm.
they know like there's no time to sit back and take it
Yes.
easy. Like they've got to come out with purpose, and you can't control what happened with the other teams. And as we know, and I cited the 2010 Celtics and the 2009 Celtics briefly, like a lot of this comes down to health and
Yeah.
and luck, and you've got to be healthy. And obviously, between the Sixers, the Knicks, and the Pacers, they all beat the heck out of each other last year. And Miami and Milwaukee ran into the issues that they ran into. But Jason Tatum was not healthy in the 2022 NBA Finals when they
Yep.
couldn't, they had a 2-1 lead on the Warriors.
That's true. Good
And
point.
Jason Tatum in game 7 in 2023 um, against the Miami Heat when the Celtics were trying to do literally the impossible and win 4 in a row. I was 20 rows from the court. His sprained ankle happened right in front of me. That
Yeah.
deflated the entire building. Like
Yeah.
that game ended in the first quarter.
Mhm.
Like it comes down to health. It comes down to luck. Um, I believe in basketball karma and the basketball gods, and hopefully they remain green for the season ahead.
Let's go. Amazing. Awesome. Well done. All right, let's get into it here. I mean, you find yourself, as we talked offline here, just so many projects and probably no time right now to really reflect and think about how life is for you in terms of all the blessings and great things that are coming your way. So many projects that you're a part of. You get to show your talents and abilities through the screen, connecting with people. But let's go back in time a little bit and talk about you growing up and sort of how we got to this point and why it all happened for you.
It's um it's pretty incredible to think about that the two things that I grew up constantly wanting to participate in, thanks to my parents, who I'm so fortunate to have parents who are still alive, still married. Um, you know, I'm from New York. My father's from Brooklyn. My mother's from Queens. No, it's not a song lyric. It's the real thing. And my mother's an artist and an art teacher. And my father, thankfully was able to go into business for himself and provide for my brother and I, but obsessed with movies and music and a sports lover. And my father started a film collection in the early 80s. And it was literally video discs, which were the size of either laser disc or LPs. And they came in this plastic sleeve. And you put the sleeve in the machine, and the disc that was in it came out, and you pulled it back out. And then halfway through the film, you had to put the sleeve back in, take it
It's so
out,
good.
flip it for the second part. And I grew up watching all of these great films from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then there was really no filter on what I was being taken to the movie theater to see. And you combine that with then having this um, competition not drilled into me, but introduced to me. And it spoke to me. And growing up, I played baseball, basketball. Eventually, was able to convince my parents to let me put a football helmet on, which is what I eventually played in college at Ithaca College. Um, but baseball and basketball, not just playing it, the history, the stories. I was a sponge for everything. So every book in the school library,
Mm.
can I, how do I convince this teacher to let me write another book report on a sports book? Um, Sports card collecting, reading the paper every day, it all had an impact. And you're watching these great films, and I never envisioned one day trying to be Steven Spielberg or Alfred Hitchcock or Stanley Kubrick, but I was moved by the films, and I looked at life through a cinematic lens.
Mhm.
And going to New York City to go to museums and to go to some shows, and always going to the movies. And my father, my grandmother on my father's side, she lived until I was 14. So like going into Brooklyn in the 80s and the early 90s, like my favorite film as a kid. I mean, this is how different I was in this respect. Two of my favorite films as a very young kid, I'm talking like 5, 6 years old, were Jaws and The French Connection. And I was obsessed with the car chase in The French Connection. So every time I'm going into Brooklyn with my dad from Long Island, anytime I see an elevated train, I'm like, is that the train from the car chase? Is that the train from the car chase? And I'm literally trying to figure it out. So this New York cinematic thing became part of who I was. And then you combine that with developing, for my age, from the community that I'm from in the suburbs of Long Island, you know, became a very good baseball player, became a good basketball player, had a group of friends who we enjoyed the competition together. And
Mhm.
that's kind of how this all began to mold together at a young age for me. And then, of course, watching the Celtics and getting the back half of Bird, Parrish, and McHale, and 80s sports on television. It's right there with the films, so whether it's the teams that I had locally to watch, that were great, whether it was the 86 Mets, the 86 Giants, remembering the Celtics and the Lakers in the finals. But my dad and I, every night, all right, who's on tonight? Who are we watching? What can I learn about this player? Watching Don Mattingly on Channel 11, watching Keith
Yes.
Hernandez on Channel 9, like Doc, Daryl, all of it. Like it was a magical time to grow up being a sports fan and have that nurtured and encouraged. So very
I love
special.
it. Um, my son's gonna be 8 November, and he's finally like, Dad, can I like watch the game? He finally, so he's been watching playoff baseball, asking questions. He's intrigued about it. There's lots of quirky rules with baseball, right? So things he's like, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, why is that person leading off? They throw it back. So teaching him about stepping off the rubber, stuff like that. But just so many core memories, and it sounds like that sort of was your mom a high school teacher, or did she just teach art like as a private sort of business for herself?
No, high
Yeah.
school art teacher, and then
Yeah.
eventually started her own private thing
Yeah.
in the community when she couldn't deal with the bureaucratic nonsense in education anymore with budget cuts and administrators. So when I was 16 years old, started teaching art classes out of our house off of this like kind of like second little mini den we had with a side door entrance and a half bathroom.
Hmm.
And she did that up until like 5 years ago. So she saw
Oh, no way.
students go through college and come out of college and just get these beautiful letters of appreciation and help students with their portfolios. I think at one point she was doing like adult classes, and it was great. And she would only have to work from like 3 to 6 in the
Yeah.
afternoon 4 days a week, and it
Yeah.
was it was it was great for her, and it was great for us as a family too.
It's such a great way to explain your childhood in terms of that creative side mixed with the sports, like lots of cool stuff happening. You talked about football becoming kind of the one that separated itself or maybe your most talented. So, throughout those high school years, why did football become the one? Or was it like were coaches like, hey, this is probably what you're best at? Or did you realize that yourself? And then you end up going playing at the post-secondary level as well.
Yeah, so basketball, like baseball was the number one through grade school, and
What position?
basketball, first base. So
Yeah.
the comedy I haven't yet written is about our little league.
Oh yeah.
Parent coached
Oh yeah.
1988 to 1990, the replica MLB uniforms. I can still
Yes.
see these guys thinking they're Tommy Lasorda with the blue starter Dodgers jackets, coaching the team, and the scuffles and the trash talk and the fights. And, unfortunately, the no filter on
Yes.
the films I was seeing was not good for my language. So I didn't have much of a filter on my mouth, which I realized was not a great representation of my parents because they were not like that. And I was very competitive and definitely had like a competitive temper. It's great and amusing to think about now, but at the time I kind of cringed at some of it.
Did you get the
But
soap
base
like the kid in
I
Christmas
got,
Story?
I
Or,
got, I
or yeah,
got, I got,
yeah.
yeah, I got the soap once or twice for
But
sure.
dad had to know he
Uh,
was part accountable for that. He's like, I'm kind of,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
but
and
he's still
and
dad. Yeah.
part of it he was proud of.
Yeah.
So and part of it is our humor to this day. So there are certain movie
Love it.
lines I could drop on my father right now, and I know I'll have him in tears. So,
Yeah.
but no, baseball. Um, I loved it, but I took this leap in basketball, sixth grade into middle school, and we were always playing football in the park, in the street. Um, I was always one of the tallest, and while I was a little speed challenged,
Hmm.
as I had a growth spurt, I never lost coordination, and just had great hand-eye coordination. And
Mm.
because of watching the Larry Bird video over and over and over again, my left hand around the basket, you didn't know if I was lefty or righty. So
Mm.
all of those things led to me wanting to play wide receiver, watching the 80s Browns, Niners, Bills, at the time Washington Redskins, having all these great receivers. I was very drawn to it. My father randomly was a Browns fan and passed it on to me, which is a different heartbreaking
Ooh.
saga for a different time. But
Sure.
the
Yeah.
way Municipal Stadium looked on television and those playoff battles, which would always end in heartbreak to Denver, but then watching all those other great NFL playoff games, like I wanted that. And they finally gave in as I was becoming a freshman in high school.
Mm.
But I had I was lucky. I found it at the right time. Sure, I wish I found it sooner. Ended up, being a varsity player for 3 years, a starter for 3 years, at wide receiver. And my junior year, I had a couple of really big games that got me, all conference honors and on the recruiting list. But the basketball experience, because of who I grew up with
Hmm.
and us playing with and against each other, grade school, middle school, high school, was the greatest thing. And by the time we were seniors, we all played 3 years of varsity together. And by the time we were seniors, um, people knew who we were, but it was kind of a suburban stereotype that went with us because of where we were located, and
Hmm.
the, I guess, the reputation of that community. But senior year, we surprised everybody. We won a conference championship. We were, back then, this is all newspaper and
Yeah.
maybe local radio, but that was our experience. And our coach was 28 at the time,
Oh, wow.
and he played college ball up in New Hampshire at a small school called Castleton State, and his coach was Stan Van Gundy. So it was
Get
early in
out.
Stan's career, and we were coached the right way. And we also played before the shot clock. So we basically flexed you to death and screened you to death. And we were all multi sport athletes. And we all had this pride and this chip on our shoulder as well. And it was a great ride. So the combination of being a three sport varsity athlete, doing it with your friends, having the excitement around it, having it be well received. Um, you knew in the moment it was really cool, but when you look back on it, and I still have friendships with a lot of my teammates,
Hmm.
I'm really appreciative of it, and
Hmm.
it's been the foundation of of my life in terms of work ethic and relationship building, and just how to handle yourself with others. So it's very important to me, and it will always remain special.
Great stuff. You mentioned being coached the right way. What does that mean to you? Just curious. I'm a bit of an
Have
older
you
school
ever
guy
have you
myself.
ever have you ever heard the term, you should start to worry if a teacher or a coach, or the phrase, you should start to worry if a teacher or a coach stops pushing you and stops paying attention to you, because that means they've checked out
Said
and
it
they
a
don't
thousand
they
times
don't
in my
care.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So um there was just a certain amount of discipline, and the
Mm.
discipline carries over to everything as adults, whether it was, forget showing up on time. Like, you better be at practice in that locker room 30 minutes early, because you better mentally prepare for practice. Because when practice starts, like, if anybody came in late, for every minute they're late, a one went up on the scoreboard. And that's how many suicides we were all running.
Mm.
And if in three-man weave, five-man weave, diagonal passing, or whatever other drill was part of the team warm-up, if a ball hit the floor, you missed a layup, you drop the pass, a one goes up on the sprint side. As soon as that sprint side becomes a five, a one goes up on the home side, and that's I don't like calling them suicides anymore. That's when you're running lines.
Hmm.
So if you come into practice with your head up your ass, and all of a sudden you've got, 12 sprints and two or three line drills to run, and you got to make them all in time, that's going to send a message. And it was about togetherness. It was about accountability. Um, the first 2 or 3 weeks of practice, we didn't touch a ball much. And if we did, it was between doing 17s and charge drills and wall sits, and it was to do passing drills. And it was, it was hard work. And it
Hmm.
was something we all really enjoyed too, because we knew what it was in preparation for. And doing it together was awesome. And my coach Rory Block, who's still there, and his son is now in
Oh,
college,
awesome.
as is his daughter. And he'll, I don't know when he's going to hang it up, but he's still coaching and he loves it. But it was a very special time. And obviously, 1993 to 1996, the way you could coach kids is not the same as what you can do today. And
Hmm.
I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Yeah.
Parents weren't welcomed at practice. The doors were closed. We practiced at 5. School ended at 2. And we practiced at 5 because nobody else was welcomed into that space with what we were going to put ourselves through. And I value it in a big way all these years
Hmm.
later.
I love it, man. You sounds like you're describing our practices. That's how I was raised. I'm a grad. My senior year was 95. We still coach the kids. We say if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. And I
Yep.
think, you think about what you do for a living right now is like if you pull up to the studio or whatever, 4 minutes before record time, you're going to do a horrible job. You're not prepared, right? Like, so It's
Yeah.
outside of, yes, the wins and losses, the competition. It's those life skills that these kids need at that age to be able to prepare themselves for the next chapter, right? And how fortunate you were. It's just so funny how the world works, right? Like your coach ended up being a, underneath Stan Van Gundy. Like, what are the chances, right? Like, so cool. Um, so why did you choose where you wanted to go for post-secondary? And I'm assuming, based on what you've told us already about your brain and how it worked and what you liked, that you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to pursue at the post-secondary level as well. Was it a big recruiting process, or was it just like, hey, it's the local place around the corner and I can go, catch some balls? Or how does that process work in 1996? Getting
Yeah. So for me, because of I very well knew like I'm not playing anything professionally, right?
right,
But at the same
but you
time,
love it.
I loved the experience so much that I was not ready to be without that team experience. And I loved the process and I loved the work. And I felt like the best version of myself was when I was involved in that. And then the other part of it is, the original plan was I was going to be a broadcaster because I had this ridiculous memory bank where even to this day, if you asked me, a random 1986 baseball team and who played what position, I'm probably going to pull a name out of my ass because
Yeah,
of collecting baseball cards and the stuff is stapled to my brain. So,
I love it.
everybody, a lot of people were encouraging me to do that. And then at the same time, my junior year of high school, I have this couple of these big football games and all of a sudden it's like you're on these recruiting lists and you're like, oh, this is possible. And, my junior year, I made all conference, which was a great honor.
Okay.
And you go to the county awards dinner, and all of the colleges from the Northeast, regardless if they were D1, 1AA, 2, or 3, are there setting up and you're on a list, right? So,
Yeah.
the funny part about this is I'm getting letters from Rutgers, Michigan, like huge schools where I'm like, okay, I'm going to send my tape where I'm clearly speed challenged, right?
Yeah.
And I can't play at these places, but just like the process of it was a lot of fun. And, I needed to like make the decision. Like, am I going to do this or am I going to just go have that big school college experience, which many of my friends chose, which is also great for sports because of what you get to go to and be a part of as a fan. But that wasn't for me. So
Hmm.
Ithaca College, which is about 250 miles from home in Western New York, was the place where I landed because it had an incredible Division III sports program. It had a great football tradition with multiple national championships and always being in the mix. And then academically, um, an incredible communication school, sports management program. So I was kind of hybrided in a major that doesn't exist anymore between the two. And then little did I know, a really good film program where I filled all my electives my last 2 years of school. And I minored in coaching because I had started
Oh,
coaching during the summers as a teenager because I went to a competitive sports sleepaway camp up in the Berkshires in Connecticut where I had other great teachers of the game. And
are
I
you
had a
coaching
great coach.
football?
No, basketball.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I was 18, I was coaching 15 and 16-year-olds during the summer
No
in like
way.
these competitive tournaments that would go back decades with these other camps. And, it was kind of like, I made my first film about it, which I'll send you.
Yeah.
Um, but, it was like these camps looking at each other like this is Pistons, Bulls, Celtics, Lakers. And it's comical to think about now. But back then, you couldn't play AAU ball back then unless you were
Yeah.
like a legitimate Division I guy.
Hmm.
So if families had the means, you'd have eventual varsity players growing up in these summer programs together, and you're playing them summer after summer. And by the time I'm 16, 4 out of the 5 of us are my high school teammates. So we're playing together year round in that environment, and that's what ultimately leads to that success. But Ithaca was great because it was the perfect balance of education, athletics, 7,000 students. And, ironically, I get up there early for football, and somebody I played Little League Baseball with who went to a different high school because of where geographically he lived, he chose Ithaca to try to play baseball there. So we reconnected, and I go to see him, and he says, "Hey, there's a guy down the hall who you should meet. He's a basketball player from New Jersey. Seems like a good guy." And he got to school early too. And I go say hello. And an hour later, we're playing outdoor pickup on campus at Ithaca. 2.5 hours go by. Nobody could get us off the court. And it turns out that that's an old friend of mine by the name of Brian Daly, who I eventually was able to work with to do all the Showtime basketball work I did, as he was one of the SVPs of sports and strategy at Showtime, and our connection started at Ithaca College in 1996. So um, I hope
That
that
is
answers
wild.
your question. It was great. I had dreams of, you know, catching touchdowns and being a D3 standout, and it didn't work that way for me,
Hmm.
but I stuck with it. I was part of a great program, great experiences, great relationships, and it's something that I really hold dear to me because to be able to go to a place like that and continue the team experience and know what it's like to like build up your body and go through that. Like we didn't lift like that in high school. It wasn't
Yeah.
that type of place. So to go
Hmm.
through that and then put a helmet on and alumni and fans and playing rivalry games and a couple of playoff games, like it was pretty great.
It's so true about the relationships piece. Like, you think that's such a wild story, is like the second person you meet on campus is a dude that you hoop with and ends up being a connect, X amount of years down the road. Um, just a huge believer in sort of, you know, try not to burn bridges and stay connected with people and be a good human. And that's such a great story. So as the football dreams come to an end and maybe, less touchdowns than you wanted, like you said, um, what's the next step for you as graduation becomes around, and then how do you break into the field? We've had a few people. I think you're familiar with Jack Jensen as well. Had him on the podcast, and sort of everybody's got a really unique outlook and approach to these things, and these, because it's not like a 9 to 5. It's not like me. It's not like a high school teacher where you have your assigned work for the day, and it's project to project and trying to get in and shake hands and meet people. So it's going to be a really interesting part. Before I ask you 405 questions about Kevin Garnett, no, I won't. I won't. I promise. But just sort of as you're speaking to, maybe there's someone out there who's interested in your field and has some interested in what insight you have to give as well. So super great reflection and on how you got to life there, and like the title of our show, A Hoops Journey, great journey, connecting with people. But what's the next phase in life for you? That, I mean, we're talking what, early 2000s now, kind of 99, 2000 ish.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we may have to
Mhm.
do like a three-part saga for this, but it really was a hoops journey, like following the passion of hoops. So
Mm.
I can't say I had a broadcasting career. I had a broadcasting moment, but
Okay.
then I've had two careers. I was a basketball coach and a teacher and a creative on the side, and then,
Mm,
I had to make a decision to pursue that other thing that was driving me crazy that I
mm,
didn't know how to get to yet. So, quickly, graduated in 2000, and I end up at Cornell University in the same town for the next school year, broadcasting Ivy League sports, including basketball, with a sports management. Excuse me, 3, 2, 1. I end up at Cornell University in the same college town as Ithaca. I end up with a sports marketing job by day, and I'm broadcasting Ivy League sports on the radio throughout that school year. And I'm the basketball broadcaster. And for any college basketball junkies listening, that was the first season that Steve Donahue took over as head coach. He eventually led Cornell to the Sweet 16 in 2010. He welcomed me into their program um, as a person who was going to be covering them, but also somebody who had some familiarity coaching. I actually was an assistant coach for them when they brought back their JV team, which was
No
very
way.
funny. And one of my high school teammates, who was a year younger than me, was on that team.
No way.
Um, and coach was a great figure for me and remains a great figure for me. And I needed to move back to New York in the spring of '01 because 5 years in upstate New York was enough for me. And he said, listen, I understand that you have to make some choices. Just know, like, we're here for you. You want to network, you want to meet people, you want to come to the Final Four, you let us know.
Mm,
And I started to do that. I went to the Final Four '02, '03, '04. Um, when I moved back to New York, I tried to figure out what I was going to do in terms of, am I going to try to broadcast? Am I going to coach? Um, I had some life lessons that I needed to learn. I definitely burned a bridge or two,
hmm.
um, just being kind of stubborn and inexperienced. But I eventually started coaching at my high school with my high school coach, which was incredible. And that made me want to pursue it even more. And I was able to move my life into New York City and get into coaching in New York City by doing camps and clinics. And I eventually got a PE teaching job at a private school so I could pay my rent. And in that same window, '03, '04, you could now buy a MacBook Pro, shoot to mini DV, get some pirated software, which I did. I got Final Cut from somebody. And now all the philosophies that I learned in college for storytelling and editing on older technology, I was now applying to digital and basically
Love it.
teaching myself how to edit. I had a decent foundation of how to handle a camera from being an intern at news stations and having to prove myself before I went out and, being in the Knicks locker room in the '99 playoffs and 2000 playoffs and sticking the mic in people's faces, or, being terrified to ask Bill Parcells a question at press availability for Jets media. Like, I lived those things already. So now when things went
Awesome.
to digital and I can start making my own stuff, I was like, oh my God, maybe one day I can do this. But at the same time, the game started to introduce me to some incredible people in New York and some great doors started to open. So I eventually got into the Nike basketball world. So, I had some magical experiences doing camps, clinics, going to different cities. One summer, I went to China for 30 days to lay the
Wow.
grassroots foundation 2 years before the Beijing Olympics, where I'm over there with American coaches, Chinese coaches, translators, tour guide, and I'm in China for 30 days.
Yeah.
And in most of the places, like, I'm the person who's the director of those camps, aside
Wow.
from an elite camp we had together, which coincided with Team USA being over there. So this is the first year. It's Colangelo, Krzyzewski, a young LeBron,
Oh yeah.
CP3, all of that, before eventually that became the gold medal group
Mhm.
in '08. So my basketball journey was so special. And when I came back from that trip, which is where I meet Aaron Phillips, because I'm welcomed into the Dime magazine world. Paul Rivera, who people know in the industry from being the creator of The Shop and being one of the partners in the Spring Hill Uninterrupted universe, we met doing basketball camps 20, 21 years ago. And he's the reason why I got to go to China, because Nike, he got his foot in the door doing like ads with them. He was a very high level street ball player playing in all those tournaments. And he was one of the people that Nike asked to coordinate the coaches to go on that journey to China.
Mm,
And we bonded in a great way over there. I met all these new people. And when we came back to New York, he brought me into these spaces. And that's how I met Aaron and met so many other people. And then Dime allowed me to start doing some digital creative as soon as I got my skills right a few years later. So I'm teaching, I'm coaching, I'm doing clinics, I'm doing
mm,
digital stuff at Dime, and it all kind of started to align. But I had to eventually make a choice, which is what I
yeah.
eventually did in 2011.
And obviously it wasn't an easy choice, but did you feel like because your craft was growing and you're like that, it's sort of that became your new sort of thing? Like it just really took over for you. You're just really engulfed in it. Is that why you made that decision? It wasn't a financial, it was more of a passion.
Yeah, there was a few reasons. I mean, listen, like I was very lucky to have a teaching job with a decent salary with benefits that allowed
Sure.
me to kind of, I taught at two different places, both private schools, but through connections, I would meet public school kids, bring them into my clinics and programs, which was a beautiful thing.
Awesome.
It was definitely getting a little burnt out with all of it. And I had some great relationships with families and parents and all that, but it was a lot. And I also like to have a good time back then. And when you burn the candle at both ends long enough,
Yes, sir.
that happens. But I don't know if you're familiar with the World Basketball Festival,
No.
which was the summer of 2010. It was the first ever World Basketball Festival put on by Nike. So I had a choice to make. They wanted me to come aboard and run grassroots of that throughout the summer. And that position eventually evolved into a full-time thing, running a non-for-profit basketball clinic program that's called Chain Link Fundamentals that, Bobito and I still talk about to this day. And this is how I met Bobito as well during this era.
So cool.
Um, so it was basically like, yo, we need you to start now because we can't wait until end of June for you to come aboard.
Mhm.
And I left my teaching job with 2 months to go in the school year, knowing it was time to take a life leap.
Mm.
And I was in this incredible group of people who all eventually found their lane through the game of basketball for the long term. But at the time, it was all just, we're working in this capacity, doing events and clinics, and there was marketing and there was all this stuff, excuse me. And in one of our recent episodes of B-Ball Radio this summer, Bobito and I felt very strongly about paying homage and respect to celebrating Kobe Bryant's life. And we both had very unique experiences being able to do some things with Kobe. So for me, it was running basketball clinics all summer long in West Harlem, where we kind of had this hub, and it was great. It was basically running like our version of Five Star outside for kids. It was all
Nice.
free for kids multiple days a week. But the culmination was, Eric, the 50 kids who were there the most, we're going to feature them on the court at Rucker. They put down this beautiful wooden court at Rucker Park. And they had all the, Team USA, Puerto Rico, China, France, and Brazil all came to town, along with all these other celeb driven and marketing driven things. But I got to run my clinic, and I say mine just because, it was something I was leading, but we got to run
Mhm.
our clinic with our staff, with these kids, with hundreds of cameras around the court at Rucker Park. And the guest instructor that I was sworn to secrecy to not tell anybody was Kobe Bryant.
Wow.
And the content that was captured that day and appearing in that content and having our own docu camera there with us, a guy by the name of Kellen Dengler, who I just recently caught up with, who now lives out here in LA as well. Um, the next day, my picture is with side by side with Kobe on all these blogs, and you have all this content coming out of it, and it reinforced to me, if you wanted to go that route, well, the stars have aligned where there's going to be an industry around this stuff.
Mm.
And with your basketball know-how, I could shoot, I could edit, I can conduct interviews. Producing a basketball event is not too far off from producing a video shoot. And you fast forward to the following spring, and I just had that pep talk in the mirror, and I rolled up my sleeves, and I got in a stance, as we like to say, and I got after it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Amazing. I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, I love that. And then the trajectory, just like how many projects, different things come across, and it's like your tree, the branches just grew and grew and grew, and then you had that foundation, and it was like, okay, let's go for it. Um, I don't want to fast forward too much here if there's a good story or anything, but like, how does it get to the point of these bigger projects, these films with Kevin Garnett, working with, Steven and Matt Barnes and these guys, like how does one get their product out
Yeah.
there so that that trust is there? And what does that side of the behind the scenes look like? It seems like a pretty interesting, it's a interesting way to go about working to me. Like it's so
Yeah,
intriguing. Yeah,
I mean, the stars had to align,
sure.
so I just kept following my instinct. I mean, for 2 years, all I did was hustle.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd pick up
Like I remember
whatever
Aaron
video.
used to say, Aaron, sorry to cut you off. He would say he would send a random email to someone like almost every day. Just be like, hey, I saw what you were doing here. I really think that's really cool. And I was like, man, that's grinding.
He's great at that. He's great
Yeah.
at that. For me, it was knowing I had this network of people through basketball and sports that I could tap into
Yeah.
and connect to things. So for 2 years, I was hustling. And when I mean hustling, I mean during work hours, I'm trying to get in front of people, I'm editing something, I'm working the phones, whatever it took. And then, at 6 p.m., or when I was supposed to leave at 5:45, I'm sprinting to the subway to go to, a church gym in Midtown to give private basketball lessons so I would have enough money to pay some bills. And or run a middle school team practice once a week and play in a Saturday league
Mhm.
in Upper Manhattan, like whatever it took. And eventually I was able to document a New York City AAU team in 2012 who had some promising talents, but talents that were not yet on the national radar. And I embedded with them for 4 months. And that's really where I knew, like, oh, my Swiss Army knife skills are really evolving here. I was shooting on a Sony EX3, which was a great camera for sports, had a great zoom lens on it, shotgun mic, lav mic, small mobile tripod, and I was a one-man
You can do it all.
storytelling army. And it turns out that this AAU team went on this incredible ride, which is what we had hoped. And this is after, coaching JV and being a varsity assistant in the Ivy League in the city in New York. And it turns out the guy that created the team, he had some resources, and his son and four of the teammates were in Riverside Church together
Oh.
up until they were 10, and they branched off and started their own thing. And his son was playing varsity at Poly Prep in Brooklyn in 8th grade. So I would coach against Poly Prep, but that was before his son ended up there.
Hmm.
So we had learned who each other were, but we had never met. And I met him because I was documenting Tyson Chandler's New York City free agency visit, a day with Tyson Chandler for Dime Magazine. And the last stop of the day was at this guy's house. His name is Bob Novogratz. And him and his wife had a TV show at one point. They have 7 children. So their TV show was called Nine by Design. And the oldest kid was a basketball phenom. So that's how we got to know each other. And we came up with an arrangement. And I embedded with the team for 4 months. And they had this wild ride to AAU Nationals. And it became a web series on YouTube, which is still there. It never got its shine, but it's there. You can watch it. And it turns out that that AAU team was Donovan Mitchell's AAU team,
Oh.
Eric Pascal's AAU team, and Mike Williams' AAU team. Mike Williams was a standout at Bishop Laughlin in Brooklyn, was captain at Rutgers, and is playing overseas. And obviously, we know who Donovan Mitchell and Eric Pascal are. And Wolfgang Novogratz, the son of Bob, he went on to pursue a career in the arts. He's acted on stage. He's been in a couple of Netflix films. And that was a really special thing to just go do and
Yeah.
just continue to build. And the momentum of that and the Tyson Chandler connection was with his agency, Excel through Dime. So I became known at Excel, the basketball agency and sports agency. And long story short, 2013, Turner buys Bleacher Report. I start to use LinkedIn as a tool. I connect with some people. I send them my work, my background. And all of a sudden, I'm being interviewed to be one of their new video producers doing basketball and NBA. And I landed at Bleacher Report, and I was there from the summer of 2013 through the finals in 2015. And it got me into the industry. I had a job. It was interesting being in a startup environment, and it also taught me what I didn't want to do for the long run. And as much as I love the game and I love churning out content, for me, it was like, how do I make movies and how do I tell stories? And fortunately, my friend from undergrad, who I mentioned at the beginning of this, he was at ESPN for years. He jumped to Showtime in 2014, and he started to throw some freelance opportunities at me in 2015. And I eventually started to do work with Showtime Sports Digital. And then my old friend, who I also mentioned earlier, Paul Rivera, he had this incredible run at Nike where he was managing the LeBron James business. He went off on he went to Beats, he went off on his own. And then when Maverick and LeBron and Rich Paul were putting everything together, they brought him in to lead their marketing arm. And Paul welcomed me into that space. And I had some contract and project work there. Some of that was doing athlete driven content with DraftKings. One
Mm,
of the shoots I was involved in overseeing right off the bat was a kind of a comedic thing with DeMarcus Cousins dressed as a referee, reffing a pickup game, giving everybody a technical foul, making
I
fun of
remember that.
himself in
Yeah.
2016. And then you fast forward, and I finally land some network gigs, which allow me to start living a little bit better.
Hmm.
I land an opportunity with an ESPN AT&T college football special that I ended up kind of show running, and it was called Big Man Back on Campus. That was 2017 going into 2018. I landed a E-League docu-series with Turner. It was their first foray into that, which continued afterward. And I mentioned that because while on that shoot, I lived in Atlanta, I think for 3 weeks, doing stuff down at Turner Studios, watching the Pelicans and the Bulls play on a Friday night. DeMarcus is finishing his second triple double of the week for the Pelicans, playing the best ball of his career. And as you can see, the poster behind me, DeMarcus tears his Achilles tendon. His career's at risk. His contract is at risk. His future's at risk. It was a rough moment, but it was also a moment to tell a story of a guy who was going to try to come back and do something. And because I had known his team and met him, we started a dialogue. And that film ended up being like a huge leap for me, getting it greenlit at Showtime. And it was one of the things, along with the Ron Artest Quiet Storm doc, which was directed masterfully by my colleague Johnny Sweet, also from New York. Those things, along with the Kobe doc, the Iverson doc, helped lead to the formation of what became Showtime Basketball. And I was fortunate enough to interview Matt Barnes for the DeMarcus Cousins film. And I just kind of said, hey, like, we're looking to do stuff. He was 1 year out of retirement. He was looking to do stuff. And all I did was connect the dots with him and Brian. And the next thing you know, they've got this incredible concept. And I'm welcomed into it to uh, lead the formation in terms of a producer director. And somehow at the same time, I get connected to Kevin Garnett and start working with his team on what his story could be.
What do you mean
And
somehow? Like that's not this is nobody just somehow casually gets connected to Kevin Garnett.
well, I was filming with fair enough. And you can cut this down any way you want. I have a little bit more time than I expected, so don't worry
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
We're filming Boogie at the NBA 2K launch event the summer of 18 in Brooklyn. And this is 2018. So this is 10 years removed from the '08 championship.
Right.
This is 10 years I've been thinking about if there's one film I want to make about a basketball player in my life, It's Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett is one of the reasons why I am doing what I'm doing. He reinforced to me by watching him play every night that you better be passionate about what you're doing. You better
Yeah.
leave it all out there. And if anybody judges you for that, then they're not for you. You have to be true to yourself. That's how I coached. That's how I ran clinics. That's how I approached preparation for creative. I'm a passionate person, and I'm a competitive person, and it's not being competitive with another producer or another director. It's being competitive with me. I got to get the
Hmm.
most out of Eric Newman and what my foundation, the foundation that I was fortunate enough to have.
Hmm.
And as I was turning 30 in '08, like I kind of felt stuck. I'm like, I don't want to coach college ball. I don't want to do that. I love New York.
Yep.
And I didn't have the network to get in front of NBA people where I maybe could have gotten a video coordinator position, or I could have started to scout because of all the stuff that I had done grassroots and coaching and clinics and training. So I meet KG at this event and we talked and it was cool, but it's not like I left there with his number or anything. But Dan
Hmm.
Levin, my producing partner, son of Mark Levin, we worked together on the documentary The Legend of Sweet Pea, which came out in 2015, which is something I'm really proud of being a part of. And it was the first like real film I was a part of and have a credit on. And Dan's father, Mark, who I also met in 2011, he became like a mentor to me in the space. And Mark Levin is a real deal doc filmmaker. And Mark ended up working with somebody um, who met KG and started to work with him on a vision for what he wanted to do in production to get in the space. And Mark used the opportunity of me executive producing the DeMarcus Cousins film with Showtime as a way to introduce me to that world in hopes of we can all do KG's story together. So um, it's funny when we were out here in January of 19, and out here I mean LA, January of 19 is when Boogie returned to the court against the Clippers. So I'm out in LA for like 5 days. And, I'm like, all right, I got to see Aaron Phillips. He's at the uninterrupted office. I know other people over there. And I had already spoken with, KG's guy. His name is Mike. And Mike was basically like, okay, I'm going to call you whatever day it was that afternoon to let you know like the timing, and you'll come over and you'll meet Kevin and the other people part of the crew, and just keep an eye on your phone. So I'm at the uninterrupted office. They were bringing in they very cool thing they do. They have like lunch, and then they bring in like a speaker from the industry to share craft and
Yeah.
secrets. And so I'm literally sitting there like
Love that.
waiting to just hang out with Aaron
Yeah.
as I'm listening to this,
Yeah.
and my phone rings, and it's Mike. He's like, "Where you at?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm at Uninterrupted. I'm here." He's like, "Well, KG's gonna leave within the next hour. How quickly can you get here?" And he gives me the address, and it's like, you know, a Pulp Fiction situation. "Oh, you're 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10."
Bring
And
out the gimp. Yeah.
literally, I no gimp. Um, but I got in an Uber,
Yeah.
and I went to a spot in downtown LA that looked like it was used in Terminator 2 for some crazy chase scene. And this gate opens, the door opens, and I'm in a room with Kevin Garnett and the rest of his crew. They have a creative deck open, trying to lay out this story of what his decision led to.
Mm.
We started to talk, and I find out very quickly, like, if Kevin Garnett is vibing with you and loving what you're saying, he's going to be locked in on you like you're the only person in the room. And after about
Mm.
5 or 6 slaps on the shoulder in agreement, saying, "Yeah, we need to continue this soon," I was like, did that just really happen? Like,
I'm
did that
guessing they
just
weren't
happen?
soft slaps either.
No,
They were legit.
no,
Yeah.
no. And I have a funny story about that later. But that was the beginning of building a relationship and building trust. And by summer 2019, we're in meetings at Showtime, story deck, budget proposals, and fall of 2019, Showtime basketball is announced. All the smoke debuts, and towards the end of the year, like we're officially a go on the film to start production in January of 2020. And to have both things happen like that, um,
Hello.
I, I, the years of grinding,
Mm,
and I shared that quote earlier, what Brad Stevens said.
yep.
And this is one of the most important things I learned through basketball and both my high school coach, Rory Block, and my summer coach, Steve Bluth, who I eventually coached high school with in the Bronx because he was the coach at Fieldston in the many years. And I got to coach with him there. But he's like, listen, you guys are talented. That's great. You're just going to show up and play, or you're going to work at it. So you get something out of the process and you get something out of the journey.
Hmm.
And then the success will feel that much better. And that's what I can equivocate to. The not the industry validation, which of course feels great, but it was like, I worked this hard for this long. I followed my instincts, I followed my passions, and look what the game has given me.
Yeah.
And I still have to pinch myself because unfortunately, 2 months and 2 weeks into 2020, the way we were all living and working then
Yeah.
drastically changed. And instead of being out and about and doing these shoots and continuing to have all the smoke in person, which was such an incredible thing,
Yeah.
we were then forced to, okay, I got to change the entire game plan around the film. And it was literally take 3 months off and restart it in June of 2020. And it was month to month filmmaking. What can I get done this month? What are people comfortable doing? Like, how do we reconfigure this? I wanted to do all these scenes instead of, and I love the interviews we did, and we did some scenes, but there was supposed to be a scene with KG and Kobe Bryant. There was supposed
Mm,
to be a scene with KG and Allen Iverson. There was hopefully going to be a scene with KG and Shaq. Well, we couldn't do that anymore. We
yeah.
couldn't work like that anymore. And then for all the smoke, like credit everybody from Matt and Stack to Brian's foresight because he had already been doing some fight show podcasts. Like we had a remote formula to try, and
Mm,
then we just took it and ran with it. And if you remember, everybody was home for three
yep.
months before the bubble was even greenlit. So all these guys wanted to do was jump on the show because they saw the beginnings of the show. Within the first 15 episodes, we had the Kobe episode, which is obviously very special and will be forever. We
Yeah.
had a very special episode with Dwayne Wade. We had an episode with Steph Curry. We had a live audience show with Kevin Garnett in Chicago All-Star Weekend, which is where we also shot stuff for the documentary. So we thought, okay, remote, it's not going to be as intimate. Let's see how 30, 40 minutes feels. And the first one was Chris Paul, and
Wasn't that so long?
he didn't want to
Y-
stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
remember
we
that.
just kept going. But like T Mac and Vince Carter and T Mac were like, they gave us so much time. But then we were able to get current players who were still home. So like April and May of 2020, like the list of guests we had, Rip Hamilton, John Morant, Tatum, it was incredible. I think it spoke to everything basketball fans wanted to have at their fingertips when it came to stories, when it came to the laughs, when it came to connecting the generations, when it came to these special mentoring moments, or Matt and Stack being very conscious of like, let's give people their flowers now. Let's show them their appreciation now. And to be able to do that during that time, I would fight with myself, meaning I can't believe I have my dream stuff right here and I have to do it under these circumstances.
Mm,
And then I would quickly, like literally reverse pivot and say, how lucky am I that
yeah.
I get to do this stuff during this time? You had people losing their jobs, losing their homes, and some people losing their lives. And I'm going to apartment building in Lower Manhattan. I'm safe. I have groceries delivered to my door. I can do my push-ups and sit-ups and my form shooting
Mm,
on the floor because they took away the fitness space. I can take walks and I can work.
yeah.
And that's what I did. And I'm very lucky. And I, for whoever's listening to this that I worked with during that time, just, thank you for sticking with it because everybody was going through something. And then, of
Hmm.
course, when everything happened in May of 2020 with George Floyd, that kind of took the going through something to another level. And obviously, that was very close to home for who we were working with and what
For sure.
Stephen went through. And he stood up and the message that he sent. And then, Kevin's trust and belief to, all right, we're going to restart the film. And it thankfully all worked out.
I love that. I love what Stack did with George Floyd stuff, and the I don't know, it was so powerful, so many things. Holy smokes, man! What am I supposed to say to all that? It's fantastic.
Yeah, the caffeine kicked in over here.
Yeah, well done, well
So
done.
thank you
No,
for that. But
that was
no,
great.
I wanted to connect the dots
Yeah.
because for anyone listening who feels like they don't know how to navigate or feels like everything has to be planned out, like Showtime basketball didn't exist. Like it was created because a group of like-minded people, and I'm just lucky that I was one of them, was like, we believe in this. Brian was able to, I have fun with him. I call him the architect. He was able to architect an approach internally to get something green lit where we could start this. And obviously, it was in front of the paywall on YouTube.
Mm,
And then also at the same time, we're telling this epic documentary story of the impact that Kevin Garnett had on the basketball culture and sports world because of his decision in 1995 to leap to the NBA, and look what resulted from it. It's very special. But to people listening who like are trying to figure out their career, like you got to be determined, you got to be committed, but you also have to be willing to just like, all right, like I'm going to do this. There's no certainty or guarantee here, but I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big believer in, you put enough into something, you're going to get some really great stuff out of it. And then, for me, I bring a certain intensity and passion to this where, I've said this before on a couple of shows. And to some people, this may sound cliche, but this is my belief, like privilege and responsibility
mm,
with these stories. Privilege to be able to do it, to work with people like this, and a responsibility to get it right. Because we very well know that there is a huge disconnect in terms of the storytelling and the connection of the Black athlete in our society and our culture.
mm,
And a whitewashed media for decades was doing the Black athlete a disservice. And obviously, I'm not traditional media. I'm a producer, director, and storyteller. But knowing the stereotypes, the stigmas, the way guys were judged, not being able to relate to guys in terms of their surroundings, where they come from. Well,
mm,
I didn't come from those places, but I got to know people who were because of sports and because of basketball and football and breaking down those walls and really developing bonds with people and having a good value system. You learn and you understand. And I I I I took that, and I took that privilege and responsibility very seriously. And I think it's evident in the work. At least I hope it is. So I just wanted to share that because it's something that drives me, and I think it's something that could, help a young person who's trying to figure out how to go about building a career.
church on a Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Good Lord. Wow. That
Well, episode 145 at 145.
is
It's
gold.
145 somewhere right now.
It is. You're
It's no longer here.
okay. Before we get on some fun questions, I just have one more, which I think ties into what you're just sort of talking about. I'm just intrigued to know, obviously, some of roles and things that you were able to do were through connections and getting to know people, and someone gets you in the room, quote unquote, whatever it is. But then you get that opportunity where it is a DeMarcus Cousins or it is a Kevin Garnett. How do you go about just staying true to who you are? There's got to be some anxiousness about like, yo, E, don't blow this. Like, but then you don't want to force and be like someone you're not. And then the next time they meet, they're like, that's not who I met. And I think it's a skill. It's a skill. And you're a very thoughtful, intelligent. There's lots to you, you can tell. And so that gate opens and then you get into that room. How do you stay true to who you are? And is it like, I'm just going to give it who I am, and if it doesn't work out, I'm okay with that? Like, I just am intrigued about that side of it, because there are some large moments that lead to these things. It's not just a smooth path, which you've touched on many times already today. Does what I'm saying make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think every instance is unique in its own way.
Mm,
Um, you know, DeMarcus was so young when we did that and dealing with such a difficult moment in his life. So we laugh about it now because we did a podcast together for much of the year, bully ball with him and Rachel Nichols, and DeMarcus is getting very, very good on the mic, and we laugh about it now. But we would butt heads sometimes,
mm,
and there'd be moments, but he respected me because I stayed true to who I was. I was prepared, and he knew that I knew the game and wanted to tell his real story.
yeah, like
And
how many times these guys get something that's like you touched on,
right,
just
right. And
yeah,
listen, I was one of the people. There was a very talented director on that named
sure,
Mitchell Hooper. But I conducted the interviews. And then we all worked together with a really good editor on that film, Brad Howell. And I'm very appreciative of DeMarcus, especially with how he stayed connected.
mm,
And I, I'm very appreciative of him. But it's so different from KG because KG is post career,
sure,
looking back on all of this and also trying to figure out, as all these guys are, who can I trust? Who can I trust to be around me? Who can I trust to tell this story? Who can I trust in business? So from day one, I knew that I'm going to be my most authentic self while also, and I'm still a work in progress. We all are, but
100%.
you see documentary filmmakers, and I'm in the film for a couple of frames here. You hear my voice off camera, throw a very poignant question at him there. But I'm not a documentary filmmaker who's throwing himself in the middle of his films. This is about Kevin. This is about Kevin's impact, Kevin's journey. This is about all the people that didn't feel like they had to sit for the interviews. They wanted to sit for the interviews because of who Kevin was and the role that he played in their life. So I think Kevin really started to trust me and respect me when he learned who I was. I was consistently that person. And there was a moment where, like, he verbalized, I'll never forget this. We spent like 3 straight days, meetings, meals, hanging out in New York, summer of 19, where we are putting it together. And we kind of had like a call to, kind of summarize what was going on. I'm in the room with him. Mark Levin and Dan are on speakerphone. And he confirmed, he's like, yo, I feel really good about this. I really trust E. I really trust everybody. This feels great. I'm looking forward to moving this forward. And I'm like,
Yeah,
did I just hear like that right? Like,
yeah,
it's very, very special. And you fast forward to the Wednesday after game 5 this year, after the Celtics win the championship. And, I don't spend the same FaceTime with KG now, even though I see him frequently for the show as the film. In the film,
Mhm.
we're doing hero interviews and strategy and all this. Now it's, it's get in the set, and my colleague Nathan Bronson, who's been running point on KG certified, drives it. I'm there for whatever's needed. We're there as a team, but the show's over and he's going on with his day. But um, the reason why I bring this up is because the Wednesday after the title, I got to celebrate the championship at the party with the Boston Celtics. I have a picture holding the trophy. And
I love how you
Kevin
say it
is
like
as,
a question.
yeah, I still can't believe it happened. And Kevin is one of the most authentic, real people I've ever met. And I know he appreciates having a real moment. And I made sure to tell him privately that I can't thank you enough because you're the one who trusted me and let people know, like, yo, I trust Eric. He's co-directing the film. And because of that relationship and that trust, doors open where I could be around the Celtics doing these things and creating other opportunities. And I got to have that moment with him and share that. And he, of course, was very receptive, and he's a human being just like everybody else. So,
Yeah.
long way of saying, like, every situation's different, but I have to stay true to who I am. I don't know how to act, like I
Yeah.
don't I don't put on an act. Like,
Yeah.
sure, do I play different roles on different projects where sometimes I'm just kind of falling back and taking it all in and then figuring out how to play my role, or if I am leading and I have to be the voice and I have to be the driver,
Hmm.
and then that's different, right? And I joke with people. I'm not big into astrology, even though I pay attention to things more now than I ever did. But people ask me my sign. I'm a Gemini. They're like, "Oh, you have two personalities." I'm like, "Nah, more like seven because of all the different hats I've had to wear." You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, imagine teaching PE to second graders, fifth graders, and eighth graders within a 3 hour window, and then going to coach high school basketball an hour and a half later in the same day. Like, you can't be the same person to all of that. You have to adjust and adapt to your environment. So I like to think that I am the most authentic to who I am, but while also reading the environment and adapting to that. And again, I'm constantly trying to figure out how to be consistent and be better and do that as a leader and a creative. So
Amazing.
yeah.
God, that's a good answer. I'm sharing that one for my leadership class when this gets
There you
edited.
go. There you
Yeah.
go. There you
Um,
go. Let me know
so
if that leadership class has royalties, okay?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, don't worry. Check will be in the mail. Yeah, I think too, they like when you hear so many things, and I love how you've talked about just getting the true, authentic person across, because how Kevin Garnett comes across is a very unique personality. And I don't know, I can just imagine the laughs and how much stuff you have to rein in, and like that some of those episodes must just be buck wild. Like that live that they had where Pierce was off his rocker. Like that was I mean, there must be so many moments where you're one pulling your hair out, but also laughing at the same time. Like I can only imagine. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, let me say this
some of the
first, and
edits. Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't include this. Like, I was always a KG fan when he was on Minnesota,
Yeah.
but as you can see, yeah, I kept my podcast background with Bobito behind me, and you see the 34 and the 35 there. Like, Paul Pierce is my guy. Like, um, and
Understandable.
I'm lucky to have been able to form a connection with him because of the work. But you rewind back to my hustle days in New York, Paul was, his agency is Excel. So when Paul got traded to Brooklyn, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing a freelance run and gun shoot with Paul Pierce. Like, this is
Yeah.
crazy. And when Paul was at ESPN, I always thought that he was being misused and not nurtured and not looked at as somebody that they valued. And he's one of the smartest basketball people I've ever talked to. Like, forget the talent,
Hmm.
but just like seeing it and then
Hmm.
translating that to words. And I think because Paul was such a tremendous scorer that his basketball IQ was overlooked. Obviously, in the later days with the big three, um, I think it became obvious what a high IQ player he was. But to begin working with Paul and to say that if Paul Pierce ever becomes available, it was multiple people saying it. Brian said it. Nate said it. I said it. If we could ever bring Paul over to pair with KG, like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
and for that to happen, and it's the laughs, it's being a fly on the wall for their brotherhood.
Yeah.
And it's a brotherhood that's been speaking to me since 2007. And it's a brotherhood that I obviously made it a point to feature in the documentary. And it's a brotherhood that I've now gotten to just be, well, I'm welcomed into the room. Um, Ironically, when that episode happened with Paul that you referred to, I was on a plane going to New York to go to Aaron Phillips' wedding.
Oh, no way.
So when I landed to the text messages and the live stream, let's just say I wasn't exactly thrilled because how Paul is perceived is important to me
Sure.
because he's trusted me and he's been very good to me. Um, but I am thrilled to say that Paul is in a great place in life from everything that I could see, and now being on Fox 4 or 5 days a week, along with us collabing earlier in the year to do the Truth Lounge, which we're going to bring back
Nice.
um, at the start of the season, and then obviously weekly with Kevin. Like, a lot of these guys have to go through some stuff after they retire to figure out what life is going to be like. That's
Yep.
because they're human. That's because they've been programmed and trained to be competition game ready and in the spotlight for that long. And then when the career is over, and yes, you have the accolades and the top 75 and the Hall of Fame. And obviously, Paul loves to be back with the Celtics and in the spotlight. And KG looks at it a different way, but he relishes the energy and the love. They all do. Um, but to see them both in this great place, and I've been able to play a little part of it from a content and storytelling standpoint. I mean, how lucky am I?
It's awesome. So good. Love it. Love the
You
protection
can't
of Paul
handle the
Pierce too.
truth.
You
You can't
cannot
handle the
handle the
truth.
truth. That MIDI was so good. All right, you ready? Let's do some
Yeah,
fun questions and we'll get on our way.
I'm with
Did
it.
you did
I'm
you
with
look
it.
them over?
Uh yeah, I don't have them memorized, but let's do it. And you could edit my hezzies.
No, no. Keep the hezzies in as you struggle. No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Books or movies? Whoa, Mr. Creator. If you had a choice, or what do we like? Books or movies?
Oh, movies.
Okay.
Movies. Movies.
Um, when we say movies to you, other than your own films that you've been a part of, what comes to your head? Is there some all-timers? Is there something you watched recently?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy that's got 25 films in his top 10, you know what I mean? So,
Fair. Okay, fair.
well, I'll tell you what I did recently.
Okay.
So my documentary, A Time to Yell More Than a Statue, we just got done with a big stretch run of screenings, and we had two screenings in DC. One on September 11th, which was pretty surreal, and one on
Yeah.
that was a Wednesday, and one on Saturday, September 14th. So in the meantime, because I was on that side of the country, I'm like, I got to get to New York. I got to see some friends and family. And that 2 week stretch at the Film Forum, which is my favorite movie theater in the world in the West Village, they were playing 2 straight weeks of Spielberg films.
Oh, no way.
And on Thursday, September 12th, after having some happy hour food and a drink with some old friends, they both had other things to do. And I'm like, you know what? I'm walking to the film forum and I'm going to sit in a packed theater full of strangers and I'm going to watch Jaws. And those are the experiences that I miss so much about New York and pre-COVID because nobody goes to the movies the same way.
Yeah,
But I mentioned that because Jaws is one of my all-time favorite films.
you mentioned that. Yeah.
And seeing that in an audience, which I've probably done at this point 5 or 6 times, you have a completely different experience. You see something different, but people were literally jumping out of their seat because they either forgot about those moments or they never saw the film before. And it was unbelievable. So, I'm very impacted by 70s cinema, and many directors as well from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So to answer your question, um, it's Jaws, it's The French Connection, it's On the Waterfront, it's The 25th Hour and Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. And then I'm Inglorious Bastards, Pulp Fiction, um, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think is a Tarantino masterpiece. So that gives you an idea. And then, I would be remiss not to say, the name of my production company is Untouchable Creative. It's because of The
Yes.
Untouchables. I saw The Untouchables in
Oh
the
yeah.
movie theater when I was 9 years old,
Awesome.
which was, somebody thankfully didn't call child services. But um, those are many of my favorites.
Different times, different times. They might have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad.
Okay, so if you go to the theater, but you don't bring popcorn, you're gonna sneak a bag of chips in, and you have a little craving. Is there a bag of chips that stand out? Are you a chip guy at all? And if there is,
I love potato chips.
okay,
Like, so the new thing, because I've been traveling so much the last few years, it's oh, what's that brand? I'm completely blanking on the brand. Damn.
what's the flavor?
Oh, original sea salt
Oh yeah,
for
so like
sure.
We have Miss Vicky's. What is it?
Yes, it's Miss Vicky's. Exactly. It's
Bada
Miss
bing.
Vicky's. So Miss Vicky's is the small bag go-to.
Mm,
You know who has one of the most underrated original potato chips? Is
wow,
Trader Joe's. Has the
really?
old school potato chips. It comes in this blue and white bag. It feels very 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah,
And do you remember what the perfect Lay's potato chip tasted like and crunched like
yeah,
when you opened that new bag?
yep,
The Trader Joe's chips are that good and on that high of a level. I've had to stop buying them because I'm like, I got to get back into shape. I finally have been hooping again all year. I stopped buying them.
yeah,
But those Trader Joe's chips, those Miss Vicky's, and then I'm a big like Cape Cod, uh, you know, kettle chip fan.
yeah. Okay, I see where you're coming. We're
Yeah.
going down. We have a place across the border in Blaine, Washington. My wife's probably gonna make us go to Trader Joe's this weekend. So, but
So
chips are,
where are you? Are you in Vancouver?
yeah, I'm about 20 minutes outside the city in a small city called Burnaby.
Awesome. All right, we got to
Yep.
talk offline about that because
Okay.
we're not that far away from each other, and yeah,
Yeah.
we'll keep that for offline.
Okay.
Nice. All right, what's next?
Who have been some of the most important people in your life up to this point? You've touched on so many people, but is there anyone you want to kind of reinforce, or is there a new and don't worry about leaving people out. You know what it's like, when you're on the other side and my side and people's brains are when they're
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
Um, I've mentioned my parents. Obviously, I have a younger brother. Um, I have a special crew of college friends from Ithaca, which Ryan is a part of. My high school teammates, very important. Ross Levine, Brian Resnick, John Falcone, Kevin Miner, Aaron Phillips, extremely important to my life. Pat Cassidy, who was one of the co-founders of Dime Magazine, who you should interview on this show.
Okay.
Very important person. My significant other now, Kiana Monroe, who I met out here in LA, has been an incredible part of my life. And one of my closest friends in the world who I played ball with during the summer, but we were high school opponents. My buddy Andrew Rusikoff is one of my closest friends in the world. So yeah, and then my two coaches who I mentioned, and I've been lucky to have some great people in my life, and um, that's a short list.
Awesome. Love that. Way to put the significant other in there. Well done. Not that they're going to listen this far, but just in case. Okay, dead or alive, the artist can be. It's your choice, but you got the best seat in the
Oh,
house. In now, like your favorite theater. I'm guessing maybe you have a favorite venue. I don't know, but if there's a couple concerts that you could re-see or like someone you haven't seen, who are you going to see?
so I looked at this question and I'm like, when did you bug my laptop? Because the question that I've asked before is what artist, what venue, what year? So
Ah,
to answer your question, for
yeah.
me, it's Jimi Hendrix.
Oh,
And whether it's the Monterey Pop, Woodstock, or a smaller venue, it doesn't matter.
yeah. It wouldn't
I
matter.
will go down these rabbit holes on YouTube where I will watch Hendrix performances and Zeppelin performances,
Oh,
and I will dream about what it would have been like to be like 20 years old in 1972.
can you imagine?
And the concert for me was always that Zeppelin at the Garden in 73,
Hmm.
but Hendrix is that artist for me. Um, in previous New York City apartments, I'll send you a picture, you get a kick out of it. Black frame, red background, and then Jimmy's face, just black and white animation on that. And it was one of my favorite wall pieces. But just you talk about watching a genius at their
Yes.
craft. There's nobody who's ever been like that. So for me, it's him.
Have you had a chance to be to the Experience Museum in Seattle? I don't know if you make it up there, but
No,
they've
I
got a.
had heard about it,
It's
and I need to go, and obviously that's not a far flight. So
yeah. Now it's smaller than I thought it would be.
yeah,
But I got to go. Also, it was really amazing. They had a whole section for the month dedicated to hip hop. I'm a huge hip hop guy, so they had that, which was amazing. And then between the Cobain and the Jimmy section, I could have spent all day just staring at everything that they had, like their outfits. They had their scribble notes, like, oh, so good. Great pick.
awesome.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. It's you and four others. We're gonna run the courts. So you could take this. You got your high school buddies, your four favorite players of all time, but we're outdoor. It's
Oh
call
wow.
your own, right? It's, first to 15, 21. You want to keep winning because you might not get back on the court depending how many people are waiting, right? So, you know,
So I get to pick my four people in their basketball primes, regardless if they're my friends
it's up
or
to you.
pros or dead or alive.
You got it. I'm
I mean,
really glad some time freed up for you.
well, listen, I've had the privilege of like doing a jump shooting workout with Paul Pierce a
Oh,
few
wow.
months ago, and like having Kevin Garnett like advise me on fixing my broke ass jump shot. So, um, to be able to play on the court with them, and yeah, this is of course this is going to be Celtic centric.
So are you the
So
one? Are you the two? What are you? Are you the three? Like,
I'm the six. I'm the guy that shouldn't be on the court. Um, you know, KG, Paul, Larry Legend, and I'm a huge Reggie Lewis fan,
oh, yes. R.I.P.
but somebody that doesn't get enough historical shine, who is from New York,
Oh,
who was in the Hall of Fame and won a championship with the Celtics. He just jumped into my mind because you're talking about getting on the courts outside. Uh Nate Archibald would be
woo!
would be incredible. So
Well,
Yeah,
there's your point guard.
I'm the whether the two or the three just getting out of the way. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
you can rely on those charge drills from the start of
Yeah, and
practice. Yeah,
I mean, listen,
the wall sits. Yeah,
Chris Ford was the two
Chris
guard on the
Ford.
81 Celtics. So, you know,
Could you grow
rest
his
in
mustache?
rest
You
in
think,
peace.
or
I grow a lot of just whiskers, but no, I don't. But that was fun to answer. And then, I have certain friends that I still wish I could get out there and play with, but the like I needed to answer that way. That's
perfect?
fun to think about. Yeah.
Love it. Super random. Obviously, you are a super talented individual. Lots, you're there many wear many hats. Lots of great stories. Do you have a hidden talent that the people might need to know about, or
Mm.
I mean, you tried to spit some bars at the start of the app, but
Yeah, that's
we had no.
definitely not it. No, I have no rhythm. I'm tone deaf. It's amazing because I take pride in being able to like score projects with composers or pick the right music for sizzle reels or for scenes. But
Right.
that just comes from growing up watching movies and my father pointing those things out to me because actually studied music at Brooklyn College. So we'd watch a film and the first thing he would often say to me is imagine that film without that music, which is very interesting.
It's very interesting,
So,
actually.
um, I mean, my memorization and recall on things, I don't, people who know me, they know that's part of who I am. So I don't know how hidden that is. But if something that's truly hidden that I get from having to quickly plan and adjust to things on the fly when I was running camps and clinics, you have a formula for everything.
Mhm.
What is the formula based on? Space and players. So my ability to walk into a room and kind of quickly navigate it,
Mm.
and I could give you a pretty good idea of how many people are in the room very quickly.
That
So
sounds a little
that's
Rain Manish.
yeah. People have
Yeah,
told me
some elements.
I have some Rain Man tendencies. I
I
mean,
mean, those are good things to have. He's a
yeah,
very bright
yeah, yeah.
individual.
I may have a little spectrum to me. I'm not sure.
Who
I'm
doesn't?
not sure. Yeah, I'm not
Who
sure.
doesn't?
Yeah, but I would
Yeah.
say those things. But like the absorption of facts, and I don't know how you feel about this, but the last 10 years, everything is kind of a blur and runs into each other, especially the last 5 years with how we've all kind of been in and
Yeah.
out of what I like to call a dystopian sci-fi film. But, you know, knowing that the Cardinals beat the Brewers in the 82 World Series and naming every matchup of the World Series or the finals in the 80s or the 70s and being able to name that shit, thankfully I've been able to utilize that in my career when I'm doing
Sure.
research or creative or whatever. So I guess that could be a hidden talent for those that don't know me overly well. It's just the memorization of stuff.
That's solid. Love it. Okay, two more. I'm not sure, as a grown man anymore if you dabble in this area, but to you growing up or maybe now, what is the greatest cereal of all time?
So I grew up in a very healthy household.
Okay. Yeah, that's always a factor. Yeah.
So I kind of had to experience cereal.
If you went to a buddy's house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
summer camp or college. So I have nostalgia for the original corn pops.
Yes.
Not the greatest cereal of all time, but there's great nostalgia around the cereal. Um, I mean, reliable would be Honey Nut Cheerios.
Good old reliable. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can't
Maybe
go
not
wrong
the
with
answer
that.
you were hoping for,
No,
but
no, it's fine.
yeah, yeah. Like the soda in my house was ginger ale.
Right.
Maybe a root beer or a cream
Ooh,
soda once in a while.
if you
There
got
was no
lucky. Yeah.
Coca-Cola. There was none of that stuff.
Hmm.
My mom was a really great cook. Healthy dinner, family dinner 6 nights a week, which I'm very appreciative of. And I went to
Yes.
college, like at least knowing I could make pasta, grilled chicken, saute vegetables, and have a meal. You
You're
know what
good
I
to go.
mean?
Yep.
So I'm good
Yep.
to go. So yeah.
Corn pops too, like a fine line between if they're too raw still, they just they just rip the roof of the mouth. And if you let them sit too long, they become soggy. That was always
Yes.
my struggle with that. But a very, very well rated cereal. That's well done. And I mean, Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had
yeah,
you had to, if you want to have some really random scientific fun with this, you had to ratio the corn pops and the milk perfectly,
yes,
and then you had to start eating it at the exact time perfectly. Because to your point, not soft enough, tear up the roof of your mouth. Too soft, I don't want this anymore.
yep.
So there you go.
The struggle's real. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great and great, great work. Great
Yeah.
work. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
last
Like forget the
question.
forget the triangle offense. Let's
Yeah.
break down the corn pops.
Who would you like to see on Hoop's journey? You've already mentioned one, but is there someone out there that's got a great story? Would be fun to chop it up with. The only thing is, you're the plug, is what they would say these days. So you're the connect.
Oh,
And like how we've got to you through Aaron, those kind of things, which I think is great. Because there's so many great stories out there to share.
I'm gonna divide this into two answers.
I knew this would be complicated.
No, because there are a couple of former players who are so real and down to earth. I think they'd be great on this show, and I think you'd have a shot at getting them.
Okay.
And then there's people who are just my friends. So from the friend side, Bobito Garcia
Oh,
and Pat Cassidy, they'd be great.
oh,
And then um, Jamal Crawford is
oh.
one of the nicest, kindest, most giving people I've met. Athlete, non-athlete, doesn't matter.
Seattle's finest.
Yeah. So Jamal, or you know who else is really great, and he's had such a great journey, and now his sons are playing at the college level, and that's Eddie House. So
Oh,
we had Eddie House on
dang
B-Ball
it.
Radio, and Eddie now has his own pod out there with Mike Bibby, and Eddie is also part of the NBC Boston pre and post game team, Emmy winner. So I'd say Eddie, and then one of his colleagues, who I have a good history with too, who's also from the Great Northwest, and that's Brian Scalabrine. So
Ah,
yeah, those guys would make for great guests. But if I had to narrow it down, like Bobito's hoops journey is unreal, and
what a
he's such
guy.
an inspiration to me as a filmmaker, as a culture shifter, as a human being. And I'm so lucky to be doing b-ball radio with him. So I would say Bob, and then Pat and I have this great friendship. But if you hung out with Pat and I, you would think we fucking hate each other, because that's how we talk to each other. And he's from Philadelphia, so the
Ooh,
Sixers Celtics thing is
yeah,
real.
yeah.
And he has not yet returned any of my text messages about the Mets ending the Philadelphia Phillies season.
Oh.
And at some point, Pat, we're going to have to take you to Flushing if you ever listen to this. I'm going to take Pat to Flushing, and I'm going to leave him on the side of the road outside Citi Field. Yeah. So there you have it.
I love it. Listen, uh, like I said at the start, timing is everything. It's taken a while, but there's many guests we've had that's taken a while. And I think we finally found the space to get this done. And whatever happened that cleared up some extra time for you, I'm very grateful for, because the stories, the thoughts, the reflections, the advice, the thinking about career, all those things that you mentioned today, so powerful, so great. And I'm very thankful that you were able to take the time away from your day, because I know it's busy, to chop it up with us, share your story. Any last thoughts, ideas, reflections before we let you go? And again, thank you so much for being with us. This was so fun. Continued success to you and all your endeavors. And let us know your last thoughts and ideas before you're on your way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will say that, first off, like, if you ever want to do something that's geared to what's going on during the season, I love our flow.
Okay.
So keep me posted on that. But
Okay.
I would say to all of us in this space who are continuing to pursue our passions and put stuff out there, and whether you're creating social posts or podcasts or a video channel on YouTube, um, stay at it, but also like we have to help each other.
Mm,
We have to help each other. There's no way I'm able to do the things I've done if I don't get help. And there's no way that I can continue to do the things that I'm trying to do if I don't help people. So, whether that's cross promotion, whether that's giving somebody a shout out, promoting their stuff on your social platform, reposting a YouTube video, Instagram, whatever, um, all the help goes a long way, whatever it is. So we have to continue to help each other. And maybe that's something we talk about down the road, because there's an incredible opportunity to continue to build great content and storytelling platforms with great people if it's done the right way. So I'll leave it at that. This was a lot of fun. I'm really impressed by what you've continued to build, and I love the way you conduct this interview. And thank you for being patient with me, not just for coming on, but with my marathon responses. But this was a lot of fun, and for me, it's a form of being able to reflect on, a really special journey and what I've been able to do. So to be able to step out of the grind to do this is fun, and it's rewarding. And I thank you for having me.
our absolute pleasure. Thank you for the kind words. Sounds like as an average C+ student in high school, maybe I passed the test today, so that's good.
Yeah,
Um, but
absolutely.
but the world is funny. It's a small place. How I got to know Aaron Phillips through the show and then connecting with you. I love it. This is what it's about. And like you say, keep sharing, supporting each other, and looking out. Episode 145 started at 145, and this is a fantastic one. We will see you all on the next one.
Peace.